it's like the Colosseum of the legal world, and what happens there has far-reaching implications. So, as the Miller case unfolds, all eyes will be on the Ninth Circuit, waiting to see which panels weigh in and how their decisions shape the legal battle. It's like a high-stakes chess game, and the Ninth Circuit holds a lot of the pieces. Key judges involved in the case. Let's meet the key judges involved in the Miller case. It's like introducing the main characters in a legal thriller. These judges come from diverse backgrounds and have different judicial philosophies, and their decisions are being watched like a hawk by legal observers and interested parties.
Our Second Amendment. It's a hell no to government trampling on our freedom.
You said that all assault weapons should be banned. Is that a fair statement?
First off, we've got Judge Min, the one who made that groundbreaking decision to strike down California's ban on so-called attack weapons. He's like the lead character in our story, the one who sets the stage for all the drama. Judge Min's decision was the catalyst for this legal showdown, and it's his stay that...
When I eat, you eat, okay?
He's the one who initially said, hold on, let's take a break here. His background and legal philosophies and potential reviews. These judges are like the supporting cast, playing crucial roles in the legal drama. Their names might not be as widely recognized, but they have the power to shape the narrative. We're talking about judges who come from various backgrounds and bring different perspectives to the table. Some might lean more conservative, while others are more liberal in their interpretations of the law. Their decisions could determine the course of the case, whether the ban gets lifted, and whether the state's appeal is successful. They're like the writers of the script, deciding which plot twists happen next.
Background checks on ammunition, a waiting period, and red flag laws. Saving lives.
I won't get you.
Americans have the
You done got the zoomies, don't you? Huh? Yeah, you do.
We know gun safety saves lives, period. It doesn't save everything. That's all we do. Every incident I get that. We're humble about it.
Where you going? Where you going?
All eyes are on these judges. Their backgrounds, philosophies, and decisions are being scrutinized like the plot of a best-selling novel. The legal world is on the edge of their seats, waiting to see how this ensemble cast of judges will shape the outcome of this gripping legal drama. It's like a courtroom version of Game of Thrones, and everyone's wondering who will emerge as the legal king or queen in the end. Potential outcomes for the stay extension.
Call your doorbell camera company and cancel the subscription.
Gotcha, didn't I?
This brand new subscription-free mini Wi-Fi camera provides more security features.
Enforcement of California's attack weapons is like a timeout that needs to be extended or made permanent to have any effect on the lower court's decision.
But madam, guns have been prevalent in the United States of America since before our founding. Women in this country have the right to defend their own lives.
If the stay isn't extended, it's game on, and the lower court's decision to strike down the ban would take effect. This means that people would be allowed to own the previously banned.
They gonna get you.
It's like saying, no more restrictions, have at it. But if the stay is extended, it's like saying, hold on a minute, we need more.
They gonna get you.
The ban remains in place while the legal wheels keep turning. An extension would mean that the ban stays and the legal battle continues.
They gonna get you.
We're not done here. The story's not over. Now, who gets to make this critical decision? It's the panels within the Ninth Circuit, like the referees in this legal game. The different panels might decide whether the stay should be extended or made permanent. This is where the drama unfolds. Their decision will have a significant impact on the case's progress. If the stay isn't extended, it's like one direction for the story. If it is, it's like choosing another path. And that choice could affect the ultimate outcome of the case.
Getting assault weapons, AR-15s, out of the hands of people who shouldn't have.
Second Amendment protects firearms in common use at the time and also said this, quote, for lawful purposes like self-defense.
Including whether the ban on attack weapons in California remains in place or is lifted. It's a pivotal moment in the legal storyline, and we'll all be watching to see which way the pendulum swings. Supreme Court review and future cases. The prospect of a Supreme Court review is like the climax of a legal drama. In the case of Miller versus California, it's a discussion that's making waves. While the legal world buzzes with debates and speculation, there's another case on the horizon that's raising eyebrows. Bianca versus Maryland. These cases are more than just legal showdowns. They're part of a broader narrative in the ongoing battle over gun rights in the United States. First, let's focus on the Miller case. It's the one that's been in the spotlight, challenging California's ban on so-called attack weapons. Judge Min's decision to strike down the ban is like a game-changing plot twist. Gun rights advocates are celebrating, but the state of California isn't throwing in the towel.
That's what gun control is all about. The ultimate goal is an unarmed and subjugated America.
Well, Mr. Wilcox, there's no law. Congress didn't pass it. That's a rule from ATF.
They've initiated an appeal, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is where this legal ping-pong match is being played out. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The possibility of Supreme Court review.
I need a gold. I want a gold.
Let's take this to the highest court in the land. This isn't a decision to be taken lightly. The Supreme Court picks and chooses which cases to hear, and the timing of such reviews is crucial. In the context of gun rights litigation, it's like selecting which chapters of a larger story to tell. But hold on, there's another case in the wings. Bianca versus Maryland. This case involves the state of Maryland's ban on so-called attack weapons. Sound familiar? It's like the sequel to Miller, dealing with a similar theme, but in a different location. The key difference here is that the Supreme Court had originally granted, vacated, and remanded the case back to the Fourth Circuit after its landmark decision in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin case.
Under the new rule, these firearm owners will be required to obtain special registration, surrender or destroy their brave.
Percentage of the shootings were done by semi-automatic weapons or rifles. The number one weapon that they use, basic pistol.
Now, why is Bianca important in the broader context of gun rights litigation? It's like the companion piece in an epic saga. While Miller is making headlines now, Bianca is further along in the legal process. It's like saying, this story has progressed further and it's ready for a broader audience, the novel. It's about finding the right moment to deliver the most impactful message. While Miller might be a contender for Supreme Court review, as well. The Supreme Court could choose to hear one, both, or neither of these cases. In the broader narrative of gun rights litigation, the selection of cases for Supreme Court review sets the tone for the entire story. It's about addressing the constitutional questions surrounding the Second Amendment and individual rights, which have been a hot topic for years. So, as we follow the legal developments in Miller and Bianca, we're not just watching individual cases. We're witnessing the ebb and flow of a larger battle over gun rights in the U.S. These cases are like chapters in an ongoing story, and the Supreme Court's decisions, or its choice not to review, will determine the
gotta be one of the quickest. Silver.
Running for president of the United States would strip away our enumerated constitutional rights.
Banning a class of weapons that you don't like the look of, not because of functionality.
The narrative continues, and we're all waiting to see what happens in the next thrilling chapter.
All right.
That's all for this week.
I'm coming.
Hey, Dr. Drew, my wife Susie here. We want to show you something. You've probably seen this guy all over your feed claiming that cutting carbs isn't necessary for weight loss.
One of the biggest fitness myths is when people say carbs make you fat. Carbs don't make you fat. I'm a big donut guy.
No need for long hours on the treadmill either.
You think that I spend 3 hours in the gym every single day and all I do is regular, steady state cardio all the time? You're wrong.
I know it sounds too good to be true, but let me tell you, there's more to this than meets the eye.
The science of weight loss was cracked a long time ago. It's not a trend, it's facts. Following all those like trendy fad diets, all those trendy workouts that you see online is literally a waste of time. There's already a proven, research-backed way to lose weight and keep it off.
I decided to delve into this topic and do some research. It turns out this guy is a celebrity trainer who's gained a massive following for challenging mainstream advice. He claims that what we've been told about weight loss is wrong, completely wrong.
Celebrities don't cut carbs. I don't do that. None of my clients do that. Nobody that has ever asked me how to lose weight have I ever told them to do that because it simply just doesn't work.
I've witnessed thousands of clients on V-Shred transform their lives and achieve their best shapes ever by dedicated, say, 20 minutes a day to 3 simple practices. And you know what? Makes a lot of sense when you listen to what he has to say.
Cardio burns fat, right? No, cardio actually burns calories, usually in the form of carbs in the bloodstream that are then replaced with the very next meal that you do eat and stored as more fat. This is why even when you eat low-calorie foods where you run for an hour a day, you get softer, but you don't actually lose any weight. And this is one of the biggest reasons why most weight loss attempts fail within the first 3 weeks. The truth is that Hollywood's elite actors and actresses, they can get super ripped because they followed a long-ignored technique that was used for generations of bodybuilders and athletes before steroids were even popular. So what's their approach? Well, they ruthlessly cut through the fluff because they have to weight because their next
Come on.
starting in 2 weeks, and so they can't waste time on the wrong program.
I cut out carbs, sugar.
I'm excited to go through this information because money is a big deal. Not having money is an even bigger deal. There's so much going on in the economy. Gas prices are going up. The Federal Reserve is struggling to keep inflation in check. Housing prices go up despite interest rates going up. And so I've brought on a friend of mine, Michael Lush, the founder of Replace Your University. And we just want to go through some financial information to help people be in the loop on what's going on with the U.S. economy. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
As always, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, Steve.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you saw this or not, but Zero Hedge just put out a very detailed report where they show the Biden administration spent $500 billion in 20 days. I mean, I don't know how we are not going to. The interest rates are so high. Janet Yellen is now saying the United States will not be able to make its interest payments unless the Federal Reserve drops that. So they're putting pressure on them because, number one, they can't financially afford it. And then number two, we're heading into a presidential calendar year. At the same time, most people can't afford the inflation that's eating into their groceries. And so you and I were talking about how the United States might actually be not only heading into a recession in 2024, but possibly entering into a silent recession. They're trying to tell you Americans have plenty of money, you can handle these increases, the government's doing everything they can, when in reality the government is really the biggest source of most people's problems.
Yeah.
Are you worried about? I know you used to be in mortgages.
Correct.
Are you at all worried about there being a housing crisis coming up?
I am to a certain degree. I think there's going to be a commercial credit crisis first, and then that will have a ripple effect into residential homes. A lot of banks are over-leveraged. What I mean by over-leveraged is they've lent out more money than what they actually have as far as fractional reserve lending, as far as deposits. So because of that, a lot of that paper is in commercial credit, where even in this building that I'm in now, you know, I've got a year before my lease comes up for renewal, and they're already asking tenants here in this building, are you going to renew? And the reason being is they're building projections, probably because they're wanting to offload this building, because most commercial paper is on 3-year arms. So if you think about when they bought this building or bought the paper for this building and the bank lent the money for this building 3 years ago, what were interest rates? They were really low. And now that those arms, adjustable rate mortgages on the commercial side are adjusting, their payments are tripling. So they can't afford it. So now they're trying to build projections in order to offload this building. So I think first and foremost it's going to come on the commercial side, and then eventually we'll have a ripple effect into residential homes as well. So it could be good news depending on how you're positioned. It could be bad news depending on how you're positioned.
So they're lending out more money than they have fractional reserves. On top of that, they own a bunch of bond paper that is basically worthless because those low interest rates and now the higher interest rates. So it is a real concern. And I tell people all the time when I used to do retirement planning, you can't control the U.S. economy, but with education, you can control your own economy. Now, I want to jump into this, but you guys, I've sent a lot of people your way with Replace Your Mortgage. They've been really happy. I've gotten messages from people. I did it myself. It ended up saving us about $250,000 in interest that we would have just given to the bank, bought them a house, and bought us a house. But you guys have a that's coming up. Can you tell us just briefly about that, and then I want to jump right into this stuff.
Yeah, actually, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you're talking about controlling what you can control, and don't worry about the things you can't control. You can't control the U.S. economy, but you can create your own microeconomy. And so we have an event that we call Create Your Own Economy. And what it is a 5-day event. And each night we're going to go over different verticals of how you can insulate yourself from rising interest rates, the market volatility, wars going on, etc. So we're going to show you how to take control of your finances and not just get ahead, but stay ahead, hopefully generationally as well. So that will start on October 23rd at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to do an hour of training, and we're going to do an hour of Q&A every single night. So that's going to be the entire week, starting from Monday through Friday. We're going to do a whole week, and we're not asking you to be there for the whole week. We're only asking for 1 to 2 hours at night once you get home from work, starting at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to pour tons of value into it. It is not a free event because when you pay attention. So it's $97. But here's the good news is that $97 we have.
Let's say things with Russia turn into the worst case scenario. A deranged, desperate Vladimir Putin sees his regime about to collapse. In a last-ditch effort to take as many enemies with him as possible, he orders a massive launch of Russia's nuclear arsenal, targeting the West. As the silos open, hundreds or thousands of intercontinental ballistic missiles, armed with nuclear warheads, streak away at speeds of 15,000 miles per hour. But where are they headed? Thankfully, this hypothetical remains very, very unlikely. Unfortunately, it's also not entirely impossible. Russia has the world's largest nuclear stockpile, with nearly 6,000 weapons and roughly 1,600 actively deployed warheads. The question of where these might strike if fired is one that experts and policymakers have worried about since the days of the Cold War. Now, with nuclear threats once rising again, it's worth looking at how such a doomsday scenario might play out. In this video, we'll take a look at the places Russia might target with a nuclear barrage, starting in the United States. Some of the first US targets for a Russian nuclear strike are the major centers of power you would expect. The Pentagon is among the most important of these, as it acts as the headquarters for the US Department of Defense. If Russia were able to damage or destroy the Pentagon, it would be an enormous blow to the command structure of the US military. It would likely not cripple the US armed forces, but would cause a major disruption and make it far more difficult for the US to organize a response. Because of the size of the nuclear blast and its fallout, a strike on the Pentagon would also likely destroy much of Washington, D.C. Some 713,000 people live in D.C., while more than 6.3 million live in the greater D.C. area. Estimates for a nuclear strike on the Pentagon indicate that close to 500,000 people could be killed instantly, with many more falling sick from radioactive fallout afterwards. The initial blast would vaporize the Pentagon itself, and anything else within a half-mile radius. Damage from the strike would radiate outwards some 4 miles from the epicenter, including the area containing the US Capitol building, White House, and Supreme Court. While the nuclear fireball and the enormous shockwave following it would be deadly on their own, it is the potential for widespread radiation which would create the biggest hazard. Radiation anywhere near the blast would be intense enough to cause third-degree burns, while also causing many harmful mutations in victims' DNA, leading to cellular degeneration and cancer. Even if people in the larger blast radius managed to survive the explosion, there's a good chance they would die from the huge amount of radiation exposure. The White House is roughly 2.17 miles from the Pentagon, putting it well within the damage zone of a nuclear blast. If the president were there, they would likely be killed by the force of the shockwave, even if the White House and Capitol were not targeted independently. Thousands of US officials and workers would certainly be killed, sending the government into crisis mode. The president would declare a state of emergency and likely invoke martial law. If the president were killed, the next in the line of succession would be the vice president, Speaker of the House of Representatives, President pro tempore of the Senate, Secretary of State, and so on, until someone alive could be reached. Besides the institutions around Washington, D.C., the second major goal of a Russian nuclear attack would be to strike as many US missile silos as possible in order to minimize a retaliatory strike. There is almost no chance this would be totally effective, as the US has nearly as many nuclear weapons as Russia, in addition to advanced early warning systems, nuclear submarines hidden around the world, and powerful air defense systems. But Russia would certainly try to take out as many silos as possible, especially those bases with Minuteman III ICBMs, which would mean targeting some very remote parts of the US. One of these is Malmstrom Air Force Base, located deep in the state of Montana. There are around 3,400 military personnel and 1,000 civilians working at Malmstrom, many responsible for the 150 Minuteman III nuclear missiles housed at the base. If a Russian nuclear weapon were able to strike Malmstrom, it would likely kill everyone at the base, plus nearly 15,000 people in the nearby towns of Black Eagle and Great Falls.
Nice.
The number of injured would be nearly double, even though the area is very sparsely populated.
Still
The high casualties would not be the goal of a strike on Malmstrom, as Russia would only be trying to cripple the ability of ICBMs to be fired from the base.
What would happen
the effects
if
of
I
a nuclear
got
strike on the local environment would be devastating. Water flowing through the Mississippi River near the impact site would instantly vaporize, while the flow from upstream would eventually pass through the irradiated area around
think I could
Malmstrom.
possibly
The river
get
would carry
10,000
radioactive
credits?
particles downstream, potentially all the
Actually, I
way
would
down its
need
length. It
at
would
least
take months
14 or
or
15.
years for any water drawn from nearby sources to be drinkable.
Yes.
In the meantime, large amounts of animals could die of radiation poisoning,
Yeah.
even those hundreds of miles away. The ecological effect of such a shock would be felt across the country, and Malmstrom is far from the only target in a potential nuclear attack by Russia. Another key base likely to be targeted by Russia is Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. The base contains roughly another 150 Minuteman III missiles and a staff of 3,200 military personnel and 420 civilians. However, the town of Minot is also more populous, with nearly 50,000 people. There would likely be over 23,000 immediate casualties, with another 20,000 suffering from injuries and radiation sickness. Like Malmstrom, any strike on Minot AFB would also cause huge environmental damage, with radioactive fallout contaminating groundwater, soil, and air. The final ICBM silo which Russia would likely attempt to first strike on would be Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. The ICBMs there would be a harder target since they are actually spread around in silos between Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. The base has roughly similar numbers of staff and missiles to Malmstrom and Minot, and casualties from a strike would exceed 25,000. Cheyenne, Wyoming would also be devastated, and anyone present would receive a high dose of radiation. In addition to the major silos, a Russian nuclear attack would also target command and control centers across the country. Many of these are similarly hidden in rural locations around the US, often in plain sight. One major target would be the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD headquarters at Peterson Air Base in Colorado. NORAD is a joint organization made up of US and Canadian service members and civilians, responsible for aerospace protection of North America. Unfortunately, Peterson Base has over 8,700 active duty personnel, 1,300 reservists, 1,900 civilian staff, 10,000 family members, and over 20,000 veterans. The base also sits just outside the city of Colorado Springs.
Damn.
So you're already using ChatGPT, and while that's awesome, there is one little problem. You're not making any money with it.
Which has a population of nearly 500,000. A nuclear strike in this area would probably kill more than 60,000 people outright, and injure or irradiate another 200,000. Contamination of the water, air, and soil would again render much of the area uninhabitable, while winds could carry it into Kansas and other neighboring states. Another major target is Offutt Air Force Base, just outside of Omaha, Nebraska. Offutt is the headquarters of the U.S. Strategic Command, or STRATCOM, responsible for strategic nuclear deterrence, global strike, and operating the Defense Department's global information grid. STRATCOM is critical to the operation of the larger U.S. military. If a nuclear warhead struck Offutt Air Force Base, it could kill more than 40,000 and injure nearly 150,000. It would also seriously degrade the U.S. ability to coordinate a military response and potentially create confusion within the command structure of the armed forces. Similarly, the nearby city of Omaha would be largely destroyed, potentially killing hundreds of thousands. The Missouri River would also be contaminated, leading to the deaths of wildlife and a drop in biodiversity. In the event that STRATCOM was hit with a nuclear strike, its command would be transferred to one of the other 10 command and control centers around the country. The new command would oversee preparations for a retaliatory nuclear strike, which could happen almost instantly, since Russia would be hard-pressed to cripple the US nuclear triad. Yet another potential target for Russian nukes would be the VLF, or Very Low Frequency Transmitter in Cutler, Maine. This station
30
transmits
pounds.
one-way
There we go.
communications to
Hell
submarines
yeah.
in the
I
US
should have broke
Navy's Atlantic Fleet,
300.
allowing them to carry out strikes if necessary. Cutler transmits its messages at 24 kilohertz and only uses 1. Cutler base, which sends launch codes to US Ohio-class nuclear submarines in the Atlantic, which form the most difficult leg of the nuclear triad for any enemy to deal with. By destroying Cutler, Russia could theoretically cut off US contact with the subs and make a retaliatory strike harder. While immediate loss of life from a strike on Cutler would be under 1,000, its position on the Atlantic coast means that ocean life and coastal ecosystems would take most of the damage. There is also Cutler's counterpart in Washington, the Jim Creek Naval Radio Station, which transmits to the Pacific Fleet. It also sits in a remote area with few potential casualties, but again, air and water contamination from radiation could reach both Seattle and Vancouver, potentially making life in both cities hazardous. The blast would also create huge forest fires in Washington, which could burn for weeks on end, creating even more hazardous air conditions. Russia would also target bases on Hawaii, which sits roughly 2,000 miles from the US mainland. On the island of Oahu is another VLF transmitter, which can relay orders to the Pacific submarine fleet if the Jim Creek installation is damaged or destroyed. The Lualua transmitter unfortunately also makes Hawaii a prime target, as it provides redundancy for fleet communications. The Russian ICBM strike on Oahu would also be extremely deadly, as it is the most populated Hawaiian island, with over 1 million people at any given time. Due to its isolation and contained ecology, a nuclear strike on Oahu could make almost the entire island uninhabitable. There are also very few places for people to hide from such an attack, so anyone on the island could either die quickly or be in serious trouble. Since Hawaii also plays host to multiple US naval bases such as Pearl Harbor, there is also a good chance that the state would be hit with multiple missiles, leaving no places for easy evacuation. Every one of these is a strategic military installation, but even just nuclear strikes on these positions would kill many hundreds of thousands of Americans.
I don't like that.
The effect of a nuclear attack on multiple US cities would be far, far deadlier. If Putin truly opted for nuclear war, there's reason to think he would do it halfway, and hitting the US's major cities would also destroy their economic capacity. In a first strike nuclear scenario, each side would try to devastate the other beyond recovery, and that means the widespread targeting of civilians. Such an attack could easily be the deadliest in human history, far exceeding the only past uses of nuclear weapons at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Outside of Washington, D.C., New York is the most obvious civilian target. It is both the financial capital of the United States and its largest city, as well as a global symbol of American power. It goes without saying that a nuclear explosion in Manhattan would be beyond devastating. The island is only 13.4 miles long, but it is one of the most densely populated areas in the entire country. An 800 kiloton nuclear warhead would instantly kill between 1.5 and 2 million people.
Damn you!
3 to 5 million seriously injured from radiation, burns, or collapsed buildings. The 5 boroughs of New York City collectively have almost 8.5 million, and every single one would have their lives upended. Even for those who avoid the initial blast or fireball, the shockwave's 500-mile-per-hour winds could prove fatal. As researchers recently wrote in New York Magazine, it would demolish the flimsiest buildings and strip the walls and roofs off stronger structures, leaving only their naked and warped scaffolding. It would snap utility poles like toothpicks and rip through trees, fling people through the air, and turn brick, glass, wood, and metal into deadly projectiles. A blast in Times Square, combined with the fireball, would carve a crater 50 feet deep at the center of the explosion. The shockwave would reach a diameter of nearly 3.2 miles, shattering windows as far as Gramercy Park and the American Museum of Natural History. The city's medical infrastructure would strain or collapse under the burden, especially with many major...
If you're between 40 and 85, get the facts today that can help keep your family...
Well, if there's a mistake, it's rotated.
Unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, have captured the imagination of Americans for decades. But much of the conversation around UFOs has been confined to science fiction movies and novels, such as the 1982 hit E.T. In the absence of government commentary on the topic, conspiracy theories around the U.S. concealing alien life and technology in secret compounds like Area 51 have run rampant. In fact, a 2019 poll found that 68% of respondents believed the U.S. government knows more about UFOs than it's telling us. Earlier this year, conversation around UFOs reached a fever pitch after the U.S. military shot down several unidentified objects in a matter of days.
Has happened again for the third day in a row and the fourth time in just 9 days. The United States has shot down an unidentified high-flying object.
One of the objects was later identified as a Chinese spy balloon. The rest, President Biden has said, are likely objects tied to private companies, recreation, or research institutions. In an attempt to be more transparent and address potential national security questions, the government has taken up the charge to publicize and legitimize the study of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, as the military has rebranded UFOs.
Today is the first hearing of its kind where we will attempt to get down to the bottom of what is actually happening with UAPs.
We want to shift the conversation about UAPs from sensationalism to science.
A 2022 UAP report published by the stated that 190
Surely your räckvidd can't have broken. There are a few things I miss from the city, like my choir. I love it here, but there's nothing like it. Open for business. I used to love seeing a musical with Astrid, but out here you have to make your own entertainment. Just this week I've made 4 sweaters, 2 fishing rods and half a cabin. You can see them if you like. We are open. May I interest you in a worm or two? Full satisfaction guaranteed, except fiskesprø. Lovely day today. Oh, never mind. The silence was nice. Rods, reels, baits, more rods. Ha det bra.